we were able to tell them, here's the vision, this is what we're asking of you now, and this is what we're probably going to ask for you again in maybe 6 or 7 years. That built enough engagement, especially as they were able to participate, the business owners, the farmers, everybody else, that brought them forward, and we were able to pass by 68%. McGregor passed by 60%. So, if I knew, a question I would ask is, if you have a $0 increase, isn't that sort of a no-brainer? Wouldn't anybody vote for that? But in the McGregor community, when the poverty rate is as it is, to tell somebody that if you vote no, your taxes are going to go down. Wouldn't you rather have that money in your pocket? That was the challenge that we had, especially with the other stuff that I shared with you. And we were able to get them to pass at 60%. And we also spent time, I built a PR campaign, if you will, with Brad Johnson, who's the new superintendent. So he's the face of the referendum. He becomes well regarded. He's liked by businesses. He's liked by the people of the ag community. He's the guy. He's the CEO of your community. I will tell you that from a school district perspective, your job is to inform. You can't advocate. Now, if you're not wearing your board chair hat, you're out in the community, you're having a good time with friends, whatever, you can advocate all that you want. But when you're sitting as a school board member, all you can do is inform. Teachers, when they're on contract, all they can do is inform. But when they're with their friends and neighbors, they can advocate. The only person who's a district employee 24/7 is Dan. And so we need to make sure that he's the voice, he's trustworthy, he has the information, but he has more than just why we're asking for, extra dollars in November. Let's talk about this plan, let's talk about this vision, and that's what I'm offering you tonight. So, as it relates to just who Nexus is, we do of course have that technical piece. We will also work with Ellers on a financial piece and show you on everything that we do how your district will be able to fund it with existing voter, non-voter approved funding. But also, and most importantly, focus on your political. How do we make sure that your public walks in step and supports you all along the way? So, this is the sort of the meat of our discussion here. Dan asked me to spend 15 minutes. But again, the focus is how do we create a long-term plan? Frankly, a strategic plan is a cornerstone of that. A strategic plan will take you 4 to 6 months. We don't have that time. What I'm offering is I can do an abbreviated strategic plan over the course of maybe 3 or 4 weeks. The board would have to be willing to spend time. There will be additional meetings. We'll have to get together and we'll work through exercises to define pillars. And then we must engage teachers and staff, and we must engage our public. I have ideas around that I've done before, and I'm willing to implement those here so that it becomes a community plan as it relates to what we're talking about here. Then we have something to start talking to your public about. It's not just we're asking you for money, it's here's the plan, and this is why we're asking you for money. It becomes much more of a value add than just saying, I haven't talked to you in a while, can you help us out? Because certainly everybody's going through hard financial times, but how do we make sure that the community continues to support us? Focus on likely supporters again. Those are your teachers, staff, those are your parents. But again, it sounds easy, but if your parents are millennials and they don't vote, how do you get them to the polls? That's a challenge. Your teachers and staff, if they're not feeling the love, that's an additional challenge. Again, in McGregor, for our advocacy campaign, there were 42 people that signed up. I had 18 people that were active. Only 5 of them were teachers and staff. Only 5. The rest came from other parts. I had an 83-year-old woman. I had another lady who was 66, who came and was active in our campaign. And that, frankly, helped significantly. We can do that here. You have a little more than 1,200 students. You have the mass, but we need to make sure that we build that support. And so focusing on likely supporters, that communication will certainly do. Focus on the rest of the community. Frankly, that's where I shine, that's where Nexus shines. No one else will focus on the rest of the community like we do here. And I'm happy to answer questions on that. Strategic planning, again, we're not looking at a one and done. We're not looking at a one and done. It's how do we start where we're at, build that baseline, and how do we define a vision for our future, and then start working towards that future. What's happening in November is one piece of that. And we can show that we're asking for this for a reason, not because we're mismanaging our money. Your public, the people that are not supporters, will go out vocally and say it's because you're mismanaging your money. Those people you will never get to vote yes. But there are other people in the community that will listen to those people, and if all they hear is that you're mismanaging your money and they don't hear the truth, that's when you have people who choose to not support you. And we can overcome that. Marketing support, as far as the district, again, the district can only inform. The district cannot allocate. And so whether it's the website or microsite, which is something that we would host and provide information to your public, it would seem as if it's still your website. Everything to something called crowdsourcing, other surveying. I believe in third-party surveying. Frankly, we don't have the time to do that now. But we have other means by which we can engage and get the feedback that we need to from your public. Improve superintendent and board relations with the community. Not a passive effort. It's not because we're doing this, hopefully some people will start to feel more positively about the board. It's an active participation with your community so that they know that we're marching in step and we have a plan. And that we're being smart about the taxpayer, but we're also valuing our students and our teachers and staff. The rest of it is a little bit beyond what we're talking about. This full cost transparency, everything that I do uniquely, everything that Nexus does is available to you in full and transparent format. Trust is not given, trust is earned. And every single time I sit in front of you, I'm going to hope to continue to earn that trust. If I don't earn that trust, I'm out. The benefit I have with McGregor is you can talk to the superintendent, you can talk to the board there. I've built relationships with Riverwood, and so you can talk to Liz Dean, who's on the school board there and works for Riverwood. You can talk to Todd Sandberg, he's a CEO, about Riverwood, about what we did working together. Those are the types of relationships that we can build to do more in a very short amount of time. The biggest thing that we have going on right now is November 3rd, you've got a lot of people who are voting. And more importantly, historically, it would be, let's have our advocacy group make phone calls, let's send mailers. Who here is going to get a phone call from a political party here over the next couple of weeks, do you think? Every single person will. Who's going to get it? You're not going to answer it. No, you won't.
I answered it, I'll be honest. 2 days ago, I didn't know.
But you wouldn't have knew.
No, I wouldn't.
You are kind. But then how much mail are you all getting from varying political parties and that kind of thing? The typical way of going about an election that we would normally go does not work very well at all. And so you need a different strategy, and I'm here to offer that. And so we can talk more about the minimizing subcontractor markups. Our change order rate on our projects is less than 1% because of the homework we do up front. I'm happy to talk more about that when the time's right. Tonight's not that time. I just hope to answer the questions you have and hopefully earn your support. First off, hopefully your takeaway is we need help with this. For a district to try and do this on their own with where you're at is not easy. Even for a district that has all sorts of experience passing referenda, this is not easy. Now we're in November, in a presidential year. You failed 2 referenda earlier. There's lots of things where you need help. Hopefully, regardless if you choose Nexus or somebody else, you take advantage of that support. And more importantly, from my perspective, I hope you choose Nexus. I'd love the opportunity to work with you. I think we could have just as much, if not more, success as we did in McGregor. So, with that, what questions?
So obviously, you talk about November 3rd, but with mail-in ballots, we've got less time than that.
September 18th. Thank you for bringing that up. In McGregor, originally 9 of their 31 precincts were mail only. A week after the absentee voting started, we went from 9 to 22. And it wasn't just the smaller precincts, it was the larger precincts because they couldn't find people to man the booths. and also just from an overall dollar perspective, the average precinct I think saves something like $7,000 by not manning a booth. So I mean, we're not just talking about November 3rd. You know, to your point, we're talking about what can be done because voting starts September 8th or 18th. In McGregor, a week before the election occurred, 20% of the public had already voted. 20%. So how do we go about touching those folks? And again, that's a whole nother layer. So thank you very much, Dennis, for bringing that up. It's a very good point. All right.
I have a question.
Joe has a question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Joe.
Are there any other references within the last year or two, maybe 3 years, that you could provide for our board?
Sure.
Projects that have been approved?
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe the nature of those projects?
Absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely.
we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, I've got, and every client is a reference. I'm happy to give you as much as you want.
If you want to get those to me, I can get them out to the board.
Sure.
I think it's a good idea because we've done a lot of initiatives or strategic planning. We've done a lot of those things, but then when we get to the implementation phase, we sort of lose traction because we don't really know what to do next.
Yes.
And so that's the piece for me. There's lots of the things that you've talked about are things that we've started or attempted, but we as a small group or even with community focus groups, it's like we just can't quite cross the T and dot the I to get there.
Yes. And so basically that begs the question, how is your help, Rob, any different? And what we do as part of our planning is every quarter we'll get together and we'll talk about what did you agree to get done? And you know, what did you get done? And then what are the next steps when we get together over the next 3 months? Keeping in mind that you'll have year-long goals. And so there's no point in having a strategic plan if we're not working towards that end. And so how often do you update the strategic plan? I mean, it varies by district, but nevertheless you need to do that. And as board members change, you know, there's education there as well, and Nexus is having that to keep you accountable yourselves. If we don't keep you accountable, simply meet and just ask, how are things going? This is what we agreed to. These are the metrics. And did we accomplish what we were set to do? So, thank you guys. Very good.
So like for us, my question would be, if we were to do this capital levy thing, I mean, basically our money's already been earmarked. Not like we're putting on brick and mortar or anything like that. What's your game in doing this?
So if we're fortunate enough to work together on that full comprehensive plan, strategic plan, your facility plan, and also with the community engagement, when it comes time to at some point go back to your public with a project and we're asking for capital dollars, then the public will be better informed, feeling much better about your community, about the school district, and it'll be, nothing's ever easy, but they'll be more in step with what it is we're trying to accomplish. If I don't help you now, selfishly, if I don't help you now and you fail, and I'm fortunate enough to work with you later, it will be significantly more difficult. Right now, you're asking for additional dollars for operating. As it relates to a capital project, that's 10, 20. I mean, back in 2016, it was $68.5 million. That is dramatically different. And how do you earn that trust if we don't earn trust in bits along the way out? So that's why I want to participate now, because it's better for the community and they're more supportive later. Does that help? Sort of. Well, again, trust is earned, and I would never ask anybody for trust after one meeting. If you have any questions at all, please share with Dan. I'm happy to answer them after this, whatever's best for you.
Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, quickly, in the information you could provide for us, will that identify maybe the size of those communities and the dollar amounts that of the respective projects that were approved?
Yes,
Would that be part of the information?
you bet.
Anything else?
Was that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't hear. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
You rob a few minutes to get the stuff together and you a few minutes to relax, I guess. Come on in.
Have a good night, everybody. Yep.
Bye, Rob.
Dennis, do you feel like an alien?
Like a what?
Like an alien?
I should be welding or something, I guess.
My dad is in the dementia unit, and I have to wear this and that to get in.
My Teresa's dad's in an apartment, and they can't even go in and see him.
No?
And he's not in a nursing home, it's an apartment, and he can't even go in there.
You can pick him up. He can leave, right?
No, well, he can, but he's quarantined for 14 days.
Well, like I can pick up my mom and take her. She's in an apartment, but I can't go in.
So Teresa's sister lived in Detroit Lakes, went to, so one family member could go in, they could get COVID tested, blah, 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 so they could be the caregiver. So she goes in and gets COVID tested, they lose her test. And they tell them, well, we'll be testing in 2 more weeks. And they lost the test.
So
I
unfair.
mean, it's
so unfair to the older generation.
right, I mean, so,
Yeah.
you know, if he goes, so he went to a doctor's appointment, so then he can't, he's quarantined, so he can't see anybody
No?
right there, so his beer went from a case in like 3 weeks to pretty much a case a week.
They say it's like the biggest sale right now.
Plug it in and you can move it. We're in the point of reach.
Okay, see if we got something.
Nope.
Right on.
There
far, so good.
Thank you. Thought you were upset.
A little taller. Who's taller?
Okay.
Well, sure, yeah.
Thank you.
There you go. Do that. Okay. Hello, guys.
So next up, we have Jeff Schlitz with ICS. Mr. Stifter, do you have any other opening comments?
Well, kind of the same thing we talked about last time. Jeff has worked, or ICS has worked with the district before, but again, asked him to talk to us about why we would need, what support we could use to try and pass this capital projects levy, and then share a little bit with, more specific about what they feel they can offer as a firm, so.
Okay, I'll turn it over to you and step off to the side.
All right. Are you able to take our mask off for presenting? Is that
Yes.
okay for the board? Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Not that bad.
What's that?
You don't look that bad.
Thanks. Hey, well, it's exciting for me to be here at the district in the remodeled media center room, and I'm Jeff Schultz with ICS, formerly with Foster Jacobson Johnson, and so I know most of you would be familiar with the work that Foster Jacobson Johnson's done, as well as ICS. About 3 years ago, we merged together, Foster Jacobson Johnson and ICS. Foster Jacobson Johnson very successful in doing K-12 planning across the northern half of the state, ICS across the southern half of the state. So 3 years ago, we joined forces, took the best of what we do and processes, procedures to refine and enhance our offerings. Since that time, we have passed 30 referendums in the state of Minnesota. I got the list of them. It's in your board book and in your packet of the various referendums. A couple of them noteworthy around you, right? The Brainerd School District done a significant referendum there, as you're familiar with. Grand Rapids, another large one. We're just opening 3 brand new elementary schools in the Grand Rapids School District last week and this week. Reamer, Northland Community Schools in Reamer, which was a challenging one, tough one to get up and over the top. Help them get their project done, as well as Hill City locally, a smaller but really important one for that community as well.
How did you get Mora?
And we got Mora. Mora, one of the toughest. There's two of the toughest ones in the entire state. Were Worthington schools and Mora schools. They are known to have failed at really tough vote no groups, and Mora we passed during the pandemic, even, right? So it's certainly not easy. Not easy to continue to work through challenging school referendum. The other thing I think that's kind of noteworthy is stick by the customers a long time. We realize what you're up against the school districts and what you're trying to accomplish. It doesn't happen quickly. It takes time, and we stand by a long time. Stood by Mora a long time. God, it's exciting to see their schematic drawings coming to completion and seeing where it's going to go, and the excitement in the community. So with that, I've had the opportunity to visit with Dan, get a sense of the plan that you're looking at to put before your voters. I like it. I gotta say, I really like it. I think it's really well thought out. I think there's some real value in what you're doing. You're in a strange way, it's sort of like an operating levy. You're trying to help free up your operating dollars, but in a more tax-friendly manner for your residents. And I think I think it's really well thought through, and I think it would be really a wise passing for your community to really give your district a step up with shifting of some dollars from purchasing a bus a year and or technology, to take that out of the general fund and have it be covered under this cost really helps you out educationally. So I think you have a really smart plan that makes a lot of sense. The key to passing that is getting the community to understand. Getting the community to understand the discussions, the thoughts that went into it, the importance of that of this passing for the board, and with that comes communication. And you're in about 9 weeks. You need to get messaging out. Got to get the value out. I think the other thing that really makes me feel good about what you're doing is that you all agreed. You all came together to support this. And I know it's been tough for the board. It's been tough for you, as to continue to work together to try to bond in unity and move forward. And so, hats off to the board and administration to getting to where you're at. So when it comes to communication on these type of projects, we brought in experts. We bring in Todd Rapp, and Rapp Strategies is a communications and strategist company. It's what they do in partnership with us on every one of our projects. We work hand in hand together. Todd and I have worked together for a better part of 15 years on school referendum type of projects and communication. I'm going to let him give some background on who he is, and he did assist in 2016 when we were working with the district on communications. And so he's got familiarity with the district, just like myself and the community. So I'm gonna put some of his information up. So maybe a little bit before that about what is ICS and what do we do, right? We do facility planning. We help with schools figure out funding of facility-related projects. We work on communication, where we provide owners rep services through design and construction. We also provide construction management services. The contract we have with the districts for construction management services for your next big referendum. That's the contract that we have together with you. We've been also work with the district on your long-range planning, master planning, which has been put on hold due to the transition of superintendents and stuff. But then we also do program management services, similar to the firm that was here prior to this. Program management is a holistic service, leading the design and construction management and holistic for projects throughout. So can certainly provide answers to questions you might have about ICS. I think you're pretty familiar with us as a team, at least most of you as a school district would be. Then I'll turn over to Todd Rapp.
Okay. I'm Todd Rapp, and what I am is a guy who was on vacation, and Jeff called me and said, Todd, come on over to Aiken with me. So that's why you see me in my Sunday best here. I was over in Pine County at the cabin, hauling gravel, but I'm pleased to be here. Just a little background on in part why I'm here is that I've been working on these types of projects now for about 17 years, working with school districts. My communications firm is headquartered down in the Twin Cities. We do a lot of fun, interesting things. We were hired to be the communications team to rebuild the 35W bridge. We were hired to be the communications team to work with the Minnesota Vikings to get a stadium improved. So we get to do some fun stuff. But one of the things I like to do best, and I probably spend probably close to half my time on, is either working with rural school districts, working with ICS, or I work with rural electric cooperatives on different kinds of energy issues. And I just like that because it gets me out of the downtown area, gets me out in the rest of the state and listening and talking to people. I'll show you in a second that I think we've got a pretty good record. I've worked with I would say most of the teams around the state that come in and do facilities work for school districts. And about 4 years ago, ICS and RAP Strategies got together and decided that we'd work in cooperation on these, and so they become fundamentally my sole contractor I work with on these types of things. If we could go ahead, Jeff. I think a few of you may have seen this at some point. It's kind of our slide on why good levy proposals fail to gain public support. The reason I put this up is to suggest that most of the heavy lifting on any kind of effort is a public information effort. It's the school district providing the right information to the public. There's one other thing that needs to happen out there, and that is that in order to pass these, an active, what's called a yes committee, needs to be out there and finding and motivating voters in elections such as this. The main thing they have to tell voters to do is find the ballot question, because at the top of it is going to be the elections they care most about, and at the bottom of the ballot, or on the flip side, is going to be the referendum question. You need to remind people who are thinking about supporting it, hey, make sure you vote on that. That's the job of the yes committee. The job of the school district is to find the right type of proposal, help the public understand how it's going to help education, and answer public's questions. School board members, you're lucky. You get to do a couple of things. I always advise superintendents, you've got enough to do providing public information. You don't need to get yourself all wrapped up in an advocacy committee. School board members are going to do both. When you're on district time, we're using district resources, you provide public information. But on your own time, you can be part of the advocacy committee and even lead that effort if you want. Now, I've met a couple of school board members over the years who've actually helped the Vote No committee. They're allowed to do that too. That's okay. The point here is that you get to do both. And frankly, if you put something on the ballot, you know as well as I do that your residents are going to want to hear from you why you put down the ballot and you think it's a good idea. Next slide. But I wanted to just kind of focus on the district's role here, because that's what you're looking for is communicating well the information about the referendum. And I've argued to superintendents and school boards for years, it's your obligation to get that information out. You are asking people to accept a tax increase, no matter how big or small it is. And when you're doing that, you need to tell them why and give them the information, the background. To not do that means you're not serving the public. And I occasionally hear from a school board member who says, boy, Todd, our folks are kind of uncomfortable getting information from us by mail. And one of the things I say is that they're more uncomfortable if you don't tell them why it is you want a tax increase. It's important for you to communicate to them. It's part of your responsibility.
One of the challenges you have, obviously, and you know this, is try to communicate over the pandemic, all the additional information you're sharing about students coming back to school, the changes that could be happening, whether it's hybrid and different case levels that might be happening. And just work hard to really communicate and get your message on this referendum through during that time, as well as the presidential election. That really is ramping up and really going to take over the airways and the communication material, mailers, and so on. So really a challenging time to get your information out. But it's important, and the obligation, I think, to really make sure people hear you. I think you got a good plan. I think if people understand it, the way I understand school funding and what it does for you and how you've unified behind it, I think it will definitely help you.
There's 8 things that school districts should communicate to the public. The value, I think every story starts with the value of the schools. It doesn't start by saying that there's something terribly wrong right now. It starts by saying, look, we're good, we have great teachers, we care, we want to keep investing in those schools. Then you need to talk about what the challenges you're trying to address, how you determined that this was the right plan, explain the plan, explain why this is the benefits, and I agree with Jeff. What you're proposing here is really smart. Free up some operating dollars by passing a technology levy. That's a smart thing to explain to people. It's a way to keep even more dollars in the classroom. You need to communicate the tax impact. All district materials, I believe, needs to tell people what the impact is going to be on taxes. That's the only way you can say what you're doing is fair and balanced. The consequences of not acting, and then finally how to find out more information. And I tend to advise my superintendents, have a 24-hour rule. If somebody contacts you, give them a response within 24 hours. If you don't have all the information that they need, you can tell them, I'll get back to you in a couple more days with more. But I think it's really important to let people know, regardless of their opinion on the referendum, that you care about their thoughts and you want to get them information. Next slide. Another thing I tried to say more and more to school boards as I talk to them is that you got to remember that every member of your community has an attachment to your schools of some kind. Okay? But not everybody is going to agree with every plan you put forward, because they're trying to balance the same thing all of you balance, right? I want to help my schools. I want to protect my pocketbook. Okay? And everybody's balancing that. And so, you're going to end up having people who oppose any question. I don't care how much. I mean, if you want to increase people's taxes by 2 cents a year, you probably won't have much opposition. Short of that, there's going to be some, but that's okay. Everybody cares. They want to make some kind of improvement, but people just balance it differently. And, a good referendum question will get 60 or 70% of the vote. I mean, that's really successful. That still means 1/3 of the people are saying no. Don't worry about that. Those are still people who care. Next slide.
Those tax neutral referendums are pretty easy to pass.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at a tax neutral where you're wrapping around debt, those types of things, when you're asking for an increase, it is much more difficult.
Now, about 2 years ago, Fred Nolan of the Rural Education Association, just recently retired, he came to me and he said, Todd, will you come up with a program for rural school districts that can't afford to have regular communications assistants? We come up with something for them. And so, we're a good member of MREA, and I like Fred a lot, so I said, okay, we'll do that. And so what we did, and in the intervening time since then, 6 of the 9 regional service cooperatives in Minnesota have contracted with RAP Strategies to in effect, provide those services for the districts who are looking for communications help during either operating or building levy referenda. Now, on the building side, if we're working with ICS, obviously, work in partnership with them. But for other districts that need the kind of communications help in referendum, what we did was we provided a low-cost way for them to get good information to the public. And these are the 10 things that we provide. We help you develop core messaging, a microsite, which is just a mini website that connects to your homepage, a brochure, a fact sheet, FAQ, which means the constant updating of the frequently asked questions, an editorial calendar for you to use with your local press. We'll provide you with 3 newspaper columns, a social media plan, 6 letter to the editor templates, a PowerPoint to use in meetings, and then we'll get on the phone with you regularly for solving phone calls. Those are, we look at districts and say, that's a pretty comprehensive communications plan. You may want to do something else. We understand that in addition to that. But that's what we're willing to provide, and we put together a package that we think is pretty reasonable for most school districts. And we do that for $9,500. We'll take care of all of that for you during the campaign. Next. Now, the bragging slide. We've got referendum experience with 39 school districts already around, mostly in Minnesota and in Wisconsin. We've provided the strategy communications for 10 successful operating levy increases. Right now we're working with Blue Earth, we're working with Nashua, Keewatin, and we're working with Bemidji on operating levies for this fall. We've also done $1.9 billion in successful building projects. And I don't come in and do anything else other than communications. I'm not a program manager, I'm not a construction manager, I'm not an architect, I'm certainly not an engineer. What we do is provide you with strategic communications help, and we've got a record so far with those 39 districts. We got 35 successes out of that. We think that's a pretty good record. So this is our goals with the district materials: transparency, accuracy, consistency, and accessibility. That's the kind of help that we'll provide the district to make sure that they have an appropriate public information campaign. I'm happy to come up here if a citizens committee comes together who wants to support it, and they'd like to sit down with somebody who understands communications. I'd be happy to sit down with them. I won't work for them. I'll work for the district. But I also know that it's important for citizens to have access to the folks who are working with the district. I'll be happy to come to a meeting, explain to them the district communication strategy, explain the difference between what the district does and what advocacy committees do. In recent years, we've worked in most of the districts we've worked in. Education Minnesota's come in. Jim Meyer, who's down in St. Paul, is the lead field person. He's field staff around the state. And they come in and they provide the help that advocacy committees need to do their job. So they don't even have to hire any kind of consultant from the outside. Education Minnesota helps them. And we know them pretty well, and we stay in our lane, which is make sure the district communicates well. Education Minnesota focuses on the get out of it.
An important part to this that's maybe understated is making sure you're following the legal requirements associated with communication and making sure you're not crossing that advocacy line as a school district, right? You need to make sure you're not advocating for a yes vote. You need to make sure you're not using district materials for an advocacy side. And we provide, with the experience that we have as a team, those, we understand that extremely well.
So finally, for school board activities, I talked about 2 different roles. You've got your role as a school board member, and that's on your district time, and you've got your role as a citizen, what you can do. Minnesota School Board Association has a good guide on all this if you need to see it, but I think that most of you have been through this before and you understand that there's a difference there. But I strongly encourage school board members. Residents are going to want to hear from you. They're going to want to hear why this is a good idea. And as Jeff says, you've got a great story to tell. This is a smart plan that you put forward. It's the kind of thing that's going to protect your operating budget well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions?
How will this be different than last time, as far as communicating with the public and stuff?
Well, one of the things that we've learned a lot in the last since 4 years from 4 years ago. Well, one of the things is having this microsite. So there's a website that's dedicated to this project. So people can go on there and really get the answers to the questions they have. We've really streamlined that process, so it's very clear, very crisp, very simple for people to click through. In addition, a social media campaign. We really have really tied into everything from Twitter to Instagram to Facebook and all of that, and it's a critical component to referendums today. Is getting that information out, getting it out in a quick and timely fashion. The third is trying to create more two-way communication. Right? Instead of just telling your story, giving a place for people. What if I have a question? A place for them to put a question in, and then to provide the assistance for your administration to help answer those questions very quickly. Because if they're coming to you for that question and you don't answer it, well, somebody's going to answer it, right? And we want you to be answering. You're the school district. You are the place we want people to come to get those questions answered and be that two-way dialogue. Otherwise, it's a rumor mill. Right? So those are some of the differences. I don't talk others.
This is such a different proposal last time. You remember back, yeah. And it's smaller, it's more focused. You're trying to use it to protect your operating budget. I remember last time you went out with a good survey. You had 3 different options. They were the most expensive one, had the least support. But the supporters of the district were divided between the really aggressive one and a more measured one, and they never really came back together. And in fact, a lot of the what was called Vote Yes work ended up being just a public information campaign. It wasn't advocacy. I think the major difference this time is what you're proposing is intended to protect classroom education. It's modest. It's time limited. In other words, the number of years you can do this levy is restricted. And I think, and hopefully, I would, and I would encourage you in your non-district role is to get some community members to be actually stronger advocates of it, not just provide information. People need to hear their neighbors like it. It is a good idea.
Any other questions?
Comment just so you're aware is, you heard Todd talk about $9,500 is what our agreement is with a number of the districts we're doing operating levies for, which is direct with him. And ICS will be providing our services at no cost. We've been working with the school district a long time, so just so you're aware, we provide our services. We'd be on the regular communication calls and assistance with the history and information at no cost to the district. Again, because we stick by our customers long term, and so just so you know, that'd be part of our proposal.
Does Mr. Ryan have any questions at all? Can you check?
Joe, do you have any questions?
No, I do not. I think what I'd asked in the previous presentation that these gentlemen have provided in the board packet, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Hogue, did you have a question?
Kevin, did you have a question?
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
See ya, Jeff.
PR day was north of Boston, wasn't it?
No.
Do you guys want to talk about this now? Do you want to wait until the next meeting? What's your plan?
I guess I would like to have some guidance from the board as to, are we interested in working with either one of these two firms or any firm help get the message out. It is a short window.
Dan,
Yes.
I just had a question. I'm curious if there's any reason you didn't inquire or ask or include Winsett, Smith, and Nolte out of Brainerd, who I know has helped some school districts in the area. And I just, they weren't here, and I thought, okay, maybe there's a reason why.
Nope. Nexus has stopped in throughout the course of the year, so I knew I had met him. And then Jeff, the same deal. There were just the two companies that had stopped in, and I guess I kind of put them both together rather quickly. If there are other firms the board would like to have visit with, I'm not against getting them. We'll see if they can present at another work session. I think we have another one scheduled 2 weeks, 14th. It's just that we heard mail-in ballots start on the 18th. I don't know how much time we really have, but I don't have any. These are just two companies that have been stopping in my office and that I knew of. So initially, my thought was I just wanted to have somebody present, talk to the board, see if we wanted to go this route. And then in talking to both of them, they talked about the tight timeline. It's sooner than later would be better. So that's why I called them back and said, hey, I don't say sales pitch, but why don't you tell us what you can do? Tell us why you feel the district would need services, which I think they both did, and then tell us a little bit more about what you do individually. So if we want to have others,
I don't think you got time for that.
What?
If you're gonna do one, you don't have time. If you're gonna try and get something going.
What did Dennis say?
He's saying he's concerned about not having enough time frame because of the short turnaround time. I think that it would be a good idea to have some help with this. There are a lot of moving parts. This is a really big deal for our school. There's a lot of intricacies and complexities about it. And so I would support having a company help us with this.
I would too. I agree. I think we're on the right track with these presentations. I would like to see one more. I just think if we're going to do this process, if in 2 weeks we could see Winsett or anybody else that somebody has in mind, it will help us. It makes a lot of sense for our district to use a professional service like this to help us narrow and define where we're going. So
We could up the meeting, Joe, is the only way, because if we wait till the 14th, we have 4 days.
well, we see if they're available. Would we be able to meet at the work session next Monday? I could find out if is it Widseth?
That's Labor Day, so
Oh,
I
yeah.
doubt that there.
We have Labor Day in there too.
Or what other night of the week would work?
you pick one.
What's obviously ICS is, that group would be $9,500. How does Nexus charge?
He didn't really give me a price component. My feeling is he would help us do this for little or no cost if we agreed to do the strategic planning with them, like the next step.
Okay.
The challenge I have there is, I know when Mr. Kelvington was here, there's an agreement with ICS to finish out the strategic plan, and when Dr. Ricks came in as interim, they just kind of put it all on hold. I believe that contract's still there to do that with ICS. So there would be a conflict of interest there, I believe, or we have to figure out something. I don't say get out of, but to get out of the contract with ICS.
Yeah, we can take a look at that. It's just been so long that I can't recall. Usually those contracts have some kind of termination clause in them. I don't think that there was any specific performance that they were performing.
Is ICS a completely different? Are they in the exact same kind of business
what Mr. Schlitz talked about is that the firm that, when he helped us 4 years ago, that
Yeah.
his firm now has partnered with the other man that was presenting, and that they have a whole new business entity themselves. And that because they have worked with us in the past, they wouldn't be charging anything additional from their standpoint. It would just be the fee for the other, the communications portion.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, in my mind, the first presentation was more like, my book of business is kind of long-term, starting with the short project, whereas the second presentation was more focused on just the short project, and not necessarily the long-term, although that could be an option, I think.
I agree. I think that these types of firms should be subject to the price. Of course, I think it's very helpful in developing a long-term funds. We haven't had that in place for a long time. We certainly haven't worked toward that. My short years on the board, I think everybody's, if I recall, we were all in agreement that it was a long-term strategy for a district to have clarity on those things. And for that reason, I would support doing or hiring somebody that could assist us with that, subject to the dollar. Which I don't know. Are these guys going to be submitting proposals?
I will, I'll have them,
Next.
I'll have them write up a proposal.
Okay.
I'll get writing from Nexus, I'll get writing from, ICS. I guess right now is, do we wanna look at, do you want me to contact WISF, am I saying that right, WISF Noting?
WSN.
WISF?
Yeah, correct.
Okay,
WSN,
WSN,
yeah.
okay, now I know what it is. And see what night they'd be available next week, and see if we can set up a meeting with them.
Sure.
Is that agreeable to the board? I will try to connect with them tomorrow and see if they're interested in what type of availability they'll have.
So maybe check with them and then check with the board members, because I don't know everybody's schedule.
Right. I'll see if they have a couple of dates or a couple of nights that work better than the other, and or morning work better. I know we've tried. I don't know.
I'm guessing we can find an evening next week sometime,
Okay.
but
I'll
subject to whatever they come up with.
Okay, I'll check with them tomorrow and see about a 7 o'clock one night next week. Any other thoughts?
Any other thoughts? No? Okay.
Right.
Next, staffing update regarding COVID-19 concerns.
I just want to update the board as of today, I guess, got the official notice. We've had 3 teachers that are not able to, due to medical conditions, don't have medical clearance to be in front of class in the classroom with kids. We have, I think there's 62 in the high school and 60 in the elementary, or somewhere about 120 kids remote learning, K-12. All 3 staff members basically have agreed to will be half-time positions with half-time sick leave, where they'll be working with our remote learning as coordinators, and then they each have some other, one we've already approved has some work in the science department. Another one I'm bringing forward is we'll be working with directly with our special education students who are remote learning, as well as focusing on our 7th and 8th graders. And then we have an elementary teacher. We're still working out the details, but it'll be kind of that person for the elementary classes or elementary students as well. Our goal is to have all our remote learning students a part of an actual classroom. They're going to be assigned to the classroom, but there's going to be some added support. I was a little nervous when we started doing this. We started looking at options, and we only had 25 or 30 kids remote learning, but now we're at 120 kids roughly between the 2 buildings. I think there's going to be more of a need, not only for kids' sake, but also for our teaching staff to have a little support on connecting with those kids who we have a hard time connecting with. So That's kind of where I'm at. We're working on those agreements right now. The teachers do have, there's a form that they're having doctors complete. So, I guess not just teachers, that's staff members that have the same option. But that's where that stands. I just wanted to give an update. We'll be bringing that to the board meeting for approval. But, 2-3 weeks.
Did we have any students, either an increase or a decrease in electing homeschooling?
We've, yes, we're getting more homeschool. I don't have a current number. Mary, how many, do you have an estimate? Rough estimate?
And so those would be in addition to the 120?
Yeah, yeah.
And they're in homeschool completely?
That's, yes, that's the information I've seen.
Have they been contacted as to why they want to homeschool versus this?
They have, between, what we done,
We're at about 27.
is that more?
Extra? More
Kids.
than last year?
More than last year. Well, there's only like 2 families that normally do it that are in this too.
2
So,
of 10 or 2 of 20?
huh?
They equal 10 students or 20?
The ones we're looking at are, that one would be 3, and then the other one was 2, so 5 kids.
We have about 22 kids above last
Probably
year.
2 more homeschoolers.
Yes.
What,
So that's a significant increase
What
from
level?
2 weeks ago, right?
Huh?
what grade level?
Let's see here. It's,
Both our remote learning and our homeschool numbers have jumped here. in the
they
last-
are not listed as far as the grade yet.
So typically, when we've had some call, I've had some call me, some call the district office, otherwise they call Sherry in the high school office, Cassie in the elementary office, or Brittany now in the elementary office. And there was early on some people saying they're at homeschool at a meeting, they wanted to distance learn, so we talked, made sure they were getting that right information, so they knew what they were choosing. And those calls are still happening and verifying, clarifying. Are you sure you want the homeschool where you're basically on your, I don't say on your own, but with the homeschool association, or do you mean you want the remote learning plan? And I'd have to believe those conversations still happening when they call. I had a message today, Mary was going to follow up with them to give that message. I don't know if you had a chance to do that or not, but there's a fine line there between talking them in out of it or just informing them. And it's, there's a variety of reasons why some parents say, we're going to do distance learning or remote learning versus homeschool and vice versa. So I don't know that there's any.
Just so just so they know the difference. Some might not know the difference.
Right, and that's been a message to our offices since this started, was just to make sure people are aware of the difference. And with remote learning, they'll be able to still get, they're free and reduced. Either way, they can still pick up the 2 meals a day. Kitchen staff's still going to make those. We wouldn't have to provide that, but that's a sales pitch, but that's a perk with being remote learning. We don't provide that, or I guess we can't with homeschooling. Kids that are remote learning will get the device. The K-5 will get an iPad eventually. Our high school, they get the Mac Airs, MacBook Airs. That's something that isn't provided at homeschool. And then you get the follow-up and the support of classroom teachers.
And I think the biggest difference is the curriculum, right? Like when you're homeschooling, you don't get any sort of curriculum.
Well, they can request
from the
textbooks
school.
basically from the school. Mm-hmm. The challenge there is, so every year fewer classes are using textbooks. It's all sorts of different materials brought in and used. So typically, if somebody requests a textbook, they might get a textbook we used in high school because we aren't buying new textbooks as much anymore. So.
Okay.
Right. So I just wanted to give a quick update on that so you know where we're at.
Any more? Any questions? Okay. Discuss capital projects levy communication plan. Is there anything different than what we've heard?
Nope, I think that's, really, I get the feeling that the board wants us to look at somebody to help us do our communications, just a matter of who, right? So initially my goal was to find out if we wanted to use somebody, and I think we do, based on what you've told me. Now to decide which direction you want me to focus on as far as who we want to work with. So I think either presentation tonight could fit, could work. So we have a history with ICS. I don't know. So much I do know, Nexus did, like you said, work with McGregor, and they seemed happy with the services there. But ICS has people I've talked to are happy with their services too. So it's really have to figure out what's a good fit for us and what we feel we need. So.
Okay, I think Mr. Miller, you're our only visitor here, so would you like to address the board?
Negative.
Okay, so with that, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Haskamp, second by Mr. Hove. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
I
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.